We're on page 67, or it's the third mimer and the third chapter. But before that, let's just read the Kitzer before to refresh our memories. In Kuntres U'Maayan. Gufa Adam harkavosai mizgay v'tchnosai hu kli lekabel tzuras nefesh Adam. The Rashab explains that the man's body, the human body, its composition, its properties are suitable, are prepared to receive the soul of man. So therefore, when the guf automatically is subservient and is drawn to the soul. Whereas in comparison, guf ha-behema, the guf of an animal, it's not. Hillel, the place? The place is page 67, the Kitzer before Peir Gimel. Okay? You're using the overcoming file.
Very good. Okay.
Okay. So the comparison, conversely, the Gufa Adam that Rabbi says is not muchen, it's not prepared that it should be makabel the tzuras nefesh Adam. So kain ha-kedusha, so too kedusha. Kelim b'likus v'oir meila begilui. Holiness are automatically, by nature, it is a vessel to receive the godly energy, the illuminated energy. Whereas, in comparison to the Sitra Achra, to the other side, to the negative side, the Klippos, shemechashvim atzmon lemitzius, they consider themselves an independent entity, a mitziut, koifer in bachdusi yisborech, hence, they deny in God's achdus. Let's continue now. Peir Gimel. V'hinei k'moshehu b'sitra achra. Just as this is true with the sitra achra, with the other side, kein hu ha'inyen b'shasa mitzvahs lo sasei the oraisa v'chol isuri d'rabbanan. So it's the same regarding the 365 mitzvahs lo sasei, the negative commandments lo sasei. Biblical, the Araisa, Minatayra, and also the Holy Surah the Rabbanan, all rabbinic prohibitions. Since they are contrary to God's will and wisdom, blessed be He. And they're actually contrary to Hashem's will and wisdom. Therefore, they are separate from God's unity. Betachlis hapeirud mamish, with the ultimate separation. Just like Sitra Achra and Klippos, which are called idolatry, Velokim Acherim and other gods, he mentioned all this before. Machbas Hester Ponim Shel Harotzon Ha'elyon Kanal Perek Beis, as we learned at the end of chapter 2 earlier, that they are because God he hides Hester Ponim, his face, he hides his face from them, right? So the Rebbe says you should know the same is with mitzvahs lo yisaseh. In other words, Yoni, you don't think of a mitzvahs lo yisaseh as being klippos. Okay, Hashem says don't do it. What the Rebbe Rashab is saying here is that the same ideology, the same energy, the same idea that's actually happening in an Avodah Zarah or in Klippos, it's the same energy that's taking place when you desecrate your Oiver a lo saseh. That's his point. Now the Rebbe says, not only is this true when you desecrate a lo saseh, the Araisa, or a Aveda, or a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, when you desecrate a rabbinic mitzvah, but v'chein gimel levushi nefesh, when it comes to the three garments of the soul, the instrument, shemiklipas neiga shebiyisrael, stemming from the translucent klippa within the Jew, sheheim, next page, machshava dibur u'maisa, they are thought, speech, and action. That are invested in the mitzvahs lo saseh, biblical and Rabbanan, right? In other words, Don't think about what you're not supposed to. Don't speak about you're not supposed to speak, and don't do what you're not supposed to do. Those are the three garments, the instruments. Machshava, dibra, maisa. So when you use your mind and you use your mouth and you use your action, your hands, to do something contrary to Hashem's 365 lo sese, do not do, then your mind and your mouth and your action becomes a vessel for this klippa. That's what he says. And now he goes even further. Not only does it impact, Hillel, your tools, your instruments, thought, speech, and action, but it actually makes a blemish in the soul. He's talking about the part of the soul, Shmuel, that's invested in garments. Because we know Chassidus explains there's a part of the neshama, Shmuel, that's not invested in the garments, which is pure. That's what we call the pintel yid, right? But that part of the neshama, and we're talking about mohus neshama, not the chitzonis of the neshama, the externality of the neshama, but the essence of the soul, that part of it, that is melubish bilavushim, kula miyuchodim mamish, at the time of desecrating a mitzvah. They are united at the time, mamish, besitra achre, v'klipa, zu unikras avodah zarah. At that time, we identify and say this part of the soul is avodah zarah, because it takes on the sin, makes such a deep impression on the soul, on that part of the soul, that part of the soul now is tainted, albeit temporarily, because you could do tshuva. But until you do tshuva, it's a real impression. It's not that something, it's not like, it's going to go away tomorrow. It's not going away tomorrow unless you do something about it.
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Rabbi, question. I don't mean to interrupt, but let's say, like, we heard all those stories, like, when people, like, God forbid, they're on their deathbed and they want to do tshuva on their deathbed, but, they have a few hours to live. But they have that intention in their mind. They made a mistake. They didn't have a chance to rectify that sin that they've done. But they mamish, before they died, they did tshuva in their head, or they said vidui before. What would you say to that?
What's the question? Whether the tshuva is granted?
Yeah.
If they did real tshuva, yes.
No, but you just said that you have to do something in order to.
Well, they did something. You said they either said b'vidui b'peh or even b'machshava. They made a decision. I want to do tshuva. Of course.
No, they said that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah, but you have to mean it. Not play a game. It's not a game. You really have to, at least that moment, you have to be in a mindset that you're not going to do it again. What does it mean to do tshuva, real tshuva? What does it mean? I mean, this is a general question. The answer is that at that moment, I could say about you, and you could say about yourself, I'm never going to do it again. And that's based, by the way, on Tanya chapter 12. The Dr. Rebbe says, Abeinani, L'over Aveda miyoma v'lo yaver l'olam. He never did an Aveda, and he never will do. And everyone asks the question, what do you mean? How do you know what's going to be tomorrow? How can you say Abeinani is someone that never did an Avera, never did Avera, he did tshuva? What about the future? I don't know what will be tomorrow. And the answer is, you judge him, you look at him, he looks at himself the way he is now. The way he is now, he's an individual that if he remains the way he's now, he's never doing an Avera again. And that's Yoni, the barometer for knowing if your tshuva is valid. Is if you could say to yourself that I'm doing tshuva this moment now, that if I stay this way, I never will do it again. Of course, if a person has free will and the next day he can make a choice not to stay that way. But Moshe, do you mind muting yourself, please? Yeah. Let's continue. Let's continue. Hello, and good morning to you, Moshe. Nice to see you. You're welcome. And not only that, next paragraph. We learned earlier, he repeats it again, they are nullified and they're ancillary to, and worse and lower than the Aveda. Why? because the klipa and the animal, they don't invest itself in the goof, in the corporeal goof, in the grub goof, in the coarse goof, knowing its master. Ve'ena meredes boy, and therefore to rebel against the master, lifil pulosa b'mishlachas malchi royim shelo, to do something very bad with an assemblage of bad angels. Shalei b'shlichus shel mokeh baruch hu chas v'shol. That's not. That would be not in Hashem's plan. In other words, the klipa does what its job is. It doesn't do anything else of its job. What's its job? To make trouble, to test you, to challenge. Okay, it does that. But it doesn't do anything outside, against its mission. Whereas you, man, are doing something against the mission, as we learned before. Let's continue. U'kamaimer Bilam. And as we see by Bilam says, Lo yuchal lavoid es pi Hashem. I cannot, even if I wanted, I cannot desecrate the mouth of Hashem. Hashem told me to be quiet. I can't. I'd like to. What do we see from that? What do we see? We see that the guy, even Bilam doesn't have real free will. And when Hashem says, I don't want you to curse the Jews, open your mouth, raise your hand, shrug your shoulders, stand up, become enraged, you're not going to be able to utter a curse against the Jews. Loi uchal. I cannot. I'm being controlled by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what's the pshat? Why is he mentioning the Shmuel? What's the pshat? So we see that the klipa is limited to its mission. That's the vort. The Jew has free will, and with its free will, it can do contrary to Hashem chas v'sholom. But the klipa cannot. So this is a rhetorical question, but we call it avodah zara, a foreign service, meaning idolatry, implying that the klipa is foreign to Hashem. So the Rebbe right away retorts to his rhetorical remark. We learned this earlier. But remember, he says, even the klipa says there is a God of all gods. So it's not that they deny the existence of God. They don't. All they do is they say God has other helpers and assistants, which is heresy, okay? But they don't they don't deny the Creator. So therefore, they cannot desecrate klal at all. They have no choice. Because they know and they comprehend that Hashem is their vitality, v'kiyumum, and their existence, for they nourish from the level of the backside within the backside. Of what? The back of what? Of Hashem's supernal will. Who? Hamakif aleim, which hovers over them. And that they know gives them their chayas and their ability to do what they do. After they get this nourishment, Hillel, what happens is this nourishment, this chayas, even though it's only acharayim da'acharayim, okay, this is a term that's you might have not come across before in Chassidus, acharayim da'acharayim, the back of the back, but nevertheless, Yoni, it's the back of Hashem. It's not the back of us, it's Hashem's acharayim. That's pretty good, right? Remember in the Torah when Moshe says, I would like to see your face, Hashem says, no man can see my face, but what does it say? He saw the acharayim. It's the acharayim of Hashem. It says the Rebbe Rashab here, that's why, even though it's only acharayim, but this acharayim is helpful to them, but it's begos. What happens is they snatch it and take it into their arena, and it adapts the game rules of their arena, and therefore it's no longer in control, the godly part, acharayim da'acharayim, within this energy, is captivated, is captured. Lahachvish atzmo melikus. For it to consider itself godliness. You see, the point, Shmuel, of the godliness of acharayim da'acharayim is in Golus. And therefore, this leads to a kfira in Hashem's unity. Why? Because Hashem's achdus means that even da'acharayim, it's acharayim da'acharayim of elikus, that realization. And when you don't come to that realization because it's in Golus, that's kfira. So it's a very interesting, it's a dual reality. On one hand, there is acharayim da'acharayim of chayis, it hovering over the klippa, and at the very same time, the klippa controls it and desensitizes the godly part of the acharayim da'acharayim, which is kfira. But he goes back and he says, like we said earlier, nevertheless, it's not complete denial. The leimar loihu, to say that this doesn't come from God, or there is no God, chas v'sholom. They don't say that. Ella, they call the Creator, the God of all gods. They say, they realize that their vitality and their existence, which is drawn to them from God's will, that's why they do their mission. They're always on par, they do their mission. Because they can't deny God's existence entirely, because they know that they get their chayas from it. What do they deny? They deny the manifestation of it. So that's why on one hand it is denial, but at the very same time it's not complete denial. And since it's not complete denial, they can't be over Ritzayna Yisbarach completely. And this is a tremendous thought, that man who has Prida Chavshis, unfortunately, a Jew can be over Ritzayna Yisbarach completely. Next paragraph, if so, so a person, a Yid, who does desecrate Hashem's will, who garua upachos, he is worse and lower, much more, than the sitrach and the klippa, nikras avodah zarah, it's called avodah zarah, v'lekim achedim, and other gods. And therefore, when man does an Aveda, he's the ultimate separation from the oneness of our God, who even worse than the Klippa. And it's as though man denies in Hashem's Achdus more than the Klippa, God forbid. Kitzer. Hashasah mitzvahs says that the 365 negative commandments, v'isurid rabbanon, and all the rabbinic prohibitions, heim nefrodim achdusi yisborich, they are separate from Hashem's oneness. Like the sitra is called strange, foreign work. Someone who sins, his thought, his speech, his action, and all his general soul is invested besitra acher. And he's worse than it, because he denies more in God than the klippa. Next mimer. 75:3. Mimer Dalet Perek Aleph. And after all the above, we'll understand the mash Yetzer Hara misisai. Remember, we began the mimer that the Yetzer Hara convinces a person to do Aveda. Shegam im yaseh ma'aseh hara. What does the Yetzer Hara say? Even if you will do a bad act, an evil act, ein nifrid machdusi yisborech. Don't worry, you're not nifrid. You're not separated. So the Rebbe says, Hurak ruach shtus hamachas al emes. It's such a stupidity. It's so foolish. It's such a lie that covers the truth. In other words, Yoni, what he explained till now is that through an Avera, you're separating yourself from Hashem. That's it. You could do tshuva, but at that time, it's a separation. So when the Yetzer Hara Moshe comes and convinces you otherwise, it's a shtus, which is the caption of the Maimer, the title, right? Nachal Shitin, shtus. Now we understand better what Chazal say on the verse, when a woman will go astray, a person doesn't do an Aveda unless the spirit of folly, the spirit of stupidity enters the person. Even a woman who is, a manayafis, a sinner. In that case, she has this, lenient, but it means, a very lightheaded type of approach to things. In this case of the Aveda. The Rebbe says she would have been able to control her indulgence, her taiva, if it wasn't the spirit of folly that entered her, 3 words, covers, conceals, hides, and so the innate love that every person has, every Jew, including her of the godly soul, to attach herself to the God's belief, his unity, and not to separate God from it. 1 second, Hillel, from God's unity. Yes, Hillel.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about this Ruach Shtus. Just two things. Is first of all, is the manner in which the Ruach Shtus enters, is in this case, this woman, similar to what the Mekubalim describe as like an Ibur Neshama, it's like some chalik from someone else or something else that enters a person like that's not a part of them. That's the first part. And the second part of the question is it, what do you make of is it meaningful that the Chazal chose the phrase Ruach Shtus in Keneged the Ruach level of Neshama, the soul that we talk about? Those are the questions.
Okay. To answer the first question, but Pashtus, it is not the idea of Ibur. No. It's not the idea of Ibur is an additional outside experience that's usually not experienced. The person, even a woman, is usually not pregnant unless she gets pregnant. So it's not something that's the norm. Here we're talking about the norm. The norm meaning free will, mitzvah and avera. Uh-huh. Okay, so that's Papashtus. Number 2. Yes, Ruach, you know that Chassidus explains there's Nefesh Ruach Shamachai Yechida. What is Ruach? What's the level of Ruach? Right?
You're asking rhetorically?
Yeah. What's Ruach? Ruach has to do, Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Ruach has to do with the Midos. The Shama is Seichel, Ruach is Midos, and Nefesh is like a Malchus. So, when you talk about the Ruach Shtus, it's the emotions. So, I would say, yes, that it is significant that it says Ruach Shtus. But again, in classical Chazal, that's not the way they interpret. They mean the spirit of an Avera, but yes, if you go deeper into Pnimius HaTorah, I would say it's correct.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so now he says, the commission is boyer. B'maimer beis pedekal sheyesh beteva b'neshamas Yisrael. We learned over there that by nature Jewish souls have she'enim yechelim liyas nifrodim b'leikus. They cannot, even if they want, to separate themselves from God. So the Rebbe says that's true from the perspective of the innate love that every Jew has. That's why even the most lenient of lenient Jews, as we learned earlier, they have Mesiras Nefesh for Hashem, like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya. Yes, but that's what's the Rebbe saying over here? What is it? He's saying, so the woman, the lady, the Isha Saita, would not, if not for the convincing yoni of the Yetzer Hara, she would not go so far, because she has an Avon Mesoteris. Va'afilu b'shtachavo levado. The Rebbe says that even just bowing down, kneeling, b'li shum emuna b'lev klal, you don't believe that this is Avodah Zarah in your heart. You know it's a farce, but you do the act of kneeling to it, bowing to it. It's also inappropriate. So he says, needless to say, to control the inclination and the desire of lust, which is it's less punishment than death for idolatry. In other words, this woman is willing to engage in niyuf, in znus, in inappropriate behavior, etc. Right? But she won't bow down to an idol, right? So how does she rationalize this? So says the Rebbe, the rationalization is, so the rationalization is, I'm giving up my Judaism. I'm saying, I'm not a Jew, there's no God, etc. And it's a denial in Hashem. Whereas niyuf is I have a lust, I have an intelligence, I have an infatuation, I want to do an avera. Says the Rebbe in Hashabir. Who gam kein shtus the klippa. This argument is a shtus the klippa. Hamal babesh b'nefesh elikis. He says it's a false argument. An avera is an avera. Cut it this way, cut it that way. It's a separation from Hashem. That's it. The fact that this separation consists of avodah zarah, which is like the big three, and this one is just a little human activity, says the Rebbe, that's a shtus, the klippa that's creeped into the nefesh elikis. In other words, the nefesh elikis is allowing the nefesh habamis, the Yetzer Hara, to convince it of making a difference between this sin and that sin, and that's a shtus. V'hainu shenid malo, it appears to this woman that bezein and a nasa nifred miyachudei v'achdus yizbarech v'ydena biyadusa. She says, by doing this taiva, I'm not separated from God's oneness, and I'm still biyadusa, I'm still Jewish. I'm still with my Yahadut. But in truth, afilu aveda kala. Even an aveda kala, we're not talking about an aveda of taiva, of niyuf, but adultery, etc. But even an aveda kala, lenient, easy aveda, harei oivra, someone who desecrates it. Desecrates the will of Hashem. And that individual is at the ultimate separation from God's oneness. More than the klippas that's called foreign gods and little avodah zarah. Next page, 75. And it's worse than all matter that has influence of Hashem, hashpa of Hashem in this world. Shehim behemoths tmeos, non-kosher animals, v'chayis v'yifus tmeim, non-kosher animals, and then birds, v'shkotzim v'romosim, and insects and reptiles. You're worse than that. The Alter Rebbe brings that. U'kamayman, as it says, Yitush kodmach. Yitush is a gnat. The Gemara says that. Pirush, the af yitush, shemachnis ve'einoim moitzi. A parasite, like a yitush, that it takes in, right? It consumes but it does not give out, doesn't excrete, right? Which means it symbolizes Hillel, the ultimate greatest klipa, and it's so distant from God, from Kedusha, because Yoni Kedusha is mashpas. Kedusha gives, it gives. And here the gnat, all it does is give me, but it doesn't give anything. So that's why the gnat is representative of a klippa that's the ultimate distance from Kedusha. Says the Gemara, Kodemes le'isha chayte. The Gemara says, even this gnat is closer, Kodemes le'isha chayte, his more priority than the man who sins. By when in the progression of the light and energy of God coming from God's will. And he explains, because the vitality of man who sins at the time when he sins, that energy is completely concealed, and much more distant from the vitality giving to the gnat. The Cholshkin Shara Balechayim Hatmeim Afiluchai is all other contaminated, impure, non-kosher animals. Shekula Meinim Mashanim Tafkidam. As we said earlier, they don't change their mission. Ufkudasa is Borich Shomer Rucham. And Hashem's command and mission is guarded by their spirit. V'afal gav di'uloi chozi. And even though they might not recognize it, they don't feel it, as it says in the Torah. And your fear and dread will be upon all animals of the earth. As the sages say in the Gemara on Shabbos, an animal will never be able to damage and hurt and control man unless man looks to the animal like an animal. That's why tzaddikim, whose image of Hashem never leaves their face, their presence, kol chayes rois, is kafkin kamayu, all bad and vicious animals are subjugated before them, because as the Zohar explains, how Daniel, begoy varoyes, in the pit of the lions, was able to, because the lions saw Daniel, they got scared of Daniel, they saw the Tzuras Elikim. They didn't see an animal. You hear, Chevre? That's the way to you can go into a jungle with lions. If you're living Hashem life and you have the Tzuras Elikim, they're not touching you. In addition to the above, the Rebbe says the fact that there's such a distance created when you do an Aveda, God forbid. Next page, 977. The Aveda separates you from godliness. Which it says in Tanya in this section of Geras HaKodesh. Yaakov is a rope, nachlose of inheritance. Yaakov is the rope that ties the neshama to godliness. Just as a rope, that its head at the top, it shakes. We could say, and when that shakes, the bottom of the rope shakes. So v'hu amshachas haneshama misharsha meheitato d'shem Hashem. That means that the neshama here below has a source in the second hay of the God's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Tetragrammaton, the name of 26. The neshama nimshachas v'yoredes leilam hazel chavish gufi adam, and it's from there that the neshama descends and goes into a body. So in other words, there's a correlation, a connection between the hay in the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the second hay, Malchus, and that part of the neshama that invests itself here. So therefore, Yoni, when you mess up here, you're shaking and messing up the hay in the Shem Hashem. For example, mechevel of, take a thick rope, shozer that's weaved, mitaryat chavolim dakim, made of 613 thin strands. Kocho, so too, chevelam shochanal. The rope coming from the neshama, from the Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's comprised kol mitayag mitzvahs. It's made of 630 mitzvahs. Ukeshe'over chas v'sholom alachas meheina. When you're desecrating even just one of those 613, nifsak chevel hadak, you cut that very thin, one thin of the 613. What does it do, Moshe? It makes the fat rope that's so thick less thick, and it becomes weakened. And a second, and a third, and a fourth. And so each strand, yes, all together it's one thick, fat, strong rope. But when you start cutting away at it, it makes an entire weakness to the entire rope. That's what he says. God forbid, when someone does an Avera that the Torah says they're obligated to get chorus, at that time, nifsek hahevel legamri, the rope is cut completely, and God forbid, that's when he dies. That's when he has, if he had chorus. It's cut, chorus. But the Rebbe wants to focus on the Kudah. What do we understand from all this? Through the convincing of the Yetzer Hara, the person, in this case the woman, falls into the activity, the Avera, the Chet, Hurak mitzad haruach shtus. It comes, this is the point he was trying to make, he was making. It comes only from the perspective of the stupid, the foolish Yetzer Hara, that makes the person cuckoo. Makes you crazy. At that time, you are meshuga, crazy, because it doesn't make sense. Why does it make sense? I have a taiva. But wait a minute, you're cutting yourself off. You're gonna have a taiva for a moment later to be cut off? It makes no sense. But let me just continue, finish the paragraph. But if you would not listen and to the convincing of the Yetzer Hara, and you would see the truth as the truth is. That doing a sin, doing a sin cuts you off completely, and you're completely distant. You're very deep, basically, deep down. You're really, deep down, below, much further than the klippos and their idols and all the stuff. Hashem Yishmerena, may God guard us from such a fall. And you make a blemish on your soul, but from the perspective of the concealed innate love between a Yid and Hashem, that one cannot, even if they'd like to be separated, they cannot. If that would have been operating, they never would have gone so far. So we have here, in a way, a dichotomy. How is it that a person is able to, and this is the Nakud of the Ois, okay? The Nakud of this chapter is that it's the Ruach Shtus that's responsible for where you are, for doing the Aveira. Now you could say, well, big deal, we know that. But the Rashab is explaining. On one hand, there is the essence of the Neshama, the Aval Musateres, and we talk about the Pintala Yid, and it's all true, he says. So what happens? What happens is the Ruach Shtus comes and convinces you and tells you a lie. Pashat lying to us. And telling us that when we do a little Aveda, we're not creating a Pirud. We are. You can do tshuva, you need to do tshuva, you will do tshuva. But right now it's a Pirud. So why would you want to invest in a Pirud? Kitzer, hachoite gerue miyitush. Oh, you know what? We'll learn tomorrow the Kitzer when we review before we start the next days. So this we went a little fast, but it's all right because he repeated a few things and he brought out the Nakuda. And what we walk away with is not to be, of course, despondent, but we have to know. You have to know what the situation is. You know, it's nice to have fantasies and wishful thinking. I can always do tshuva, and I will. My friends, right now, it hurts. You don't want to have, does anyone want to have a temporary hurt? No. You don't want to have temporary discomfort, temporary hurt. You could take a medicine, you could put a bandage on, you can rest it. You know, I sprained my ankle. It's still not 100%. Baruch Hashem, I didn't break it. Okay. But who wants to sprain your ankle? I don't want to sprain my ankle. But you're going to be back to the same foot. Thank you very much. What do we have to go through? And that's where the Ruach Shtus comes in. The Ruach Shtus says, it's worth a little sin. It's worth the pleasure you'll get. And this is what the Yetzer Hara does. Okay, Chevra, have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Same time, same channel. Bye-bye.